So how do these questionable social media trends impact our young women? Psychologist Dr. Lauren Hazori joins me with more insight. You know, a lot of 15-year-olds are looking a lot older these days. What's driving this over-sexualization of young women on social media?
Well, Dr. Ian, I think that, well, I'm grateful 40 is the new 30. It's quite disturbing that 12 is the new 20,
Yeah.
and I think it comes down to not only the way that girls dress today, but with the different filters that they have on social media. And we all know how celebrities pose and they make that famous. So the girls want to be like the celebrities and the influencers. And so instead of standing with their arms at their sides and smiling, they learn to spread their legs, toss their shoulder forward, put on a pouty face, and that certainly sexualizes them in a way that oftentimes they don't even really understand.
Yeah, but Dr. Lauren, there's some real impact when you look at the over-sexualization and the self-sexualization that these young women are going through.
Yeah, and it's a growing concern and growing problem. The American Psychological Association actually formed a task force to see what psychological impact this is having, the sexualization of girls is having on their long-term emotional health. We found that the sexualization of girls in society overall and on social media really has an impact on their mood, on their school performance, on the relationship with themselves, their self-esteem, and it could possibly lead to, depression, anxiety, suicide.
And there's got to be like this really strong appeal to these young women to sell nudes on sites like OnlyFans. Why is it so strong? What is the huge attraction?
I honestly, I had never heard of OnlyFans until I was asked to do this show. So when I received the request, I did some research myself to find out what OnlyFans is. And so the first person I went to was my 17-year-old daughter. And I said, hey, what's OnlyFans? And she said, why are you asking me about that? So she, of course, knew. And then I started to ask a lot of the girls that come into my office, hey, have you heard of OnlyFans? And so I'm not talking necessarily just about, OnlyFans, but the reason that nudes are so common and sexting is so common and anything like this is because, number one, it really does tie into how society in general has sexualized teen girls and young women for decades. This isn't a new thing.
Sure.
It's just that social media and these apps make it so accessible that it's hard for them to say no. Let's think about it this way. We live in a society that really values money, right? And in the pandemic, there's been an increase in use of these things during the pandemic because a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are struggling financially. So of course that makes it more interesting for them right now. Number two, sex sells. We all know that people who are sexually attractive get more likes and follows. So a girl who stands with her arms at her sides, giving the big old smile with all the teeth, she learns quickly that when she does the sexier pose with the pouty face, that she gets a lot more likes and follows than somebody who does the former pose. So, girls learn pretty quickly what gets them to fit in and what gets them, feeling good about themselves. And in the short term, it feels good to get all those likes. But in the long term, it ends up affecting their self-esteem. So the attraction is making money, feeling like they're fitting in, they're doing what the celebrities that they so look up to are doing. And I'm not really quite sure that celebrities and influencers recognize that they have a significant responsibility to these Gen Z kids. They're home. A lot of them haven't been going to school or socializing to stay safe. And so they're home and they're getting all of their human connection on this device that's in the palm of their hands. And a lot of times they're doing things that they don't recognize what those long-term consequences are going to look like. And what I mean by that is, the frontal lobe of our brain, the part of our brain that makes rational decisions, that helps us to see consequences for our actions and for our behaviors, that frontal lobe isn't fully formed until about 25 years old. But the part of our brain that thinks very emotionally, that part is cruising in our teen years. And so they don't recognize what impact this is going to have on them. So I think what's so attractive about it is money. The sexualization, they have learned that their value comes from their sex appeal. And lastly, they're not really thinking the same way that we would with an adult brain.